Okay, welcome to probably the most important factorizing video of your life. I know I don't usually say this is very important. Obviously everything is important, but this is extremely important to understand because this is the foundation for when we work onto graphs and we go and draw parallelograms. Not parallelograms, or am I speaking about parabolas? They both start with P, sorry, forgive me. But parabolas, then this is going to be very, very important. So all graphing and stuff, we're going to work with these, what we call quadratic equations. It's called a quadratic equation because that's a squared, and the highest degree is 2. The degree of the function is just to what level the index is raised. So in this case, it's 2. But not going into too much detail. Till now, what we've done is when I asked you to factorize, or when we were asked to factorize, there was something in common here. We had like a 4x plus, let's say, a 2xy, and we say, oh, there's a 4 and a 2 we can take out, and an x and an x. But in this case, there's nothing like that because there's not an x everywhere. There are 3 terms, and nothing will work. But it can. There's just a little bit of a trickery involved. It's not, obviously initially it's going to be like, what am I talking about? But the more we do, the more practice you get, the better you'll become. So when you have this trinomial, usually it's kind of in this form where there's something squared, and then there's something times the x, and then there's a constant number. So this should be able to factorize into 2 brackets. Not always. Again, there are different methods of doing this. For this method, we're going to try the easiest way. If that doesn't work, then we'll have to do a different way. But for this, I know the easy way will work. Okay, so I'm going to have 2 brackets. I'm going to write those 2 brackets. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what is the square root of this first one? And that's just the x. So this is very similar to the difference of squares, where we looked at x squared minus 4, and you wrote an x there. But now we have to find out what to write here. And to do this, we're going to have to solve a riddle. Now the riddle is, I'm going to say the riddle and then we're going to solve the riddle. What 2 numbers, if I multiply them, will give me a plus 6, but if I add or subtract them, they're going to give me plus 7. I know we're not looking at the 6 now, or not at that x now. We're just looking at that 6 and that 7, and I'm asking what 2 numbers, if I multiply them, when I add them together, they'll give me 7. So I'm going to have to write this as a product of its factors. So 6 I can write as, and just 2 of the factors, right? So it's, because there's just 2 numbers. So 1 times 6 is an option. And also 2 times 3 will be an option. Okay, so I kind of write that on the side. And because this is a positive 6, then I'll need a positive 1 times a positive 6, that would give me a positive 6, or negative 1 times negative 6. Now this writing method is just me working out, so it's not really a normal writing method, it's just like my little method, my little trick. Then the next one is, I want to still get to positive 6, so it will be either positive 2 and positive 3, or negative 2 times negative 3. And now to solve my riddle, I'm going to kind of just add them across and see which one gives me to plus 7. Now I'm going to start at the bottom because the first one is the answer, but let's just look at this. If I had negative 2, so negative 2 minus 2, negative 2 minus 3, that would be negative 5. If I did plus 2 plus 3, plus 2 plus 3, that would be plus 5. That's not 7. If I looked at the bottom one, negative 1 plus negative 6, and negative 1 plus negative 6, well, not plus, but that would be negative 7. What am I doing? Equals to negative 7. And the top one is actually the first one that's correct. 1 plus 6. So 1 plus 6 is 7. So I'm going to fill in the 1 and the 6, and both are positive. So that I know now if I were to multiply this out, again, please don't multiply, you've already written the answer. But if I were to multiply this out, the x times the x would give me x squared. The plus 1 plus the x will give me plus x. And then the 6 times the x would be plus 6x. And then the last ones multiplied would be plus 6. And this is common, or not common, there are like terms. So x squared plus 7x plus 6. I don't know why I put 2 pluses there, but anyway. And this is that. Again, please don't write this. This is just proving that that is actually true. So we're going to look at the second example. We're going to look at a couple of examples because this is definitely not the easiest, fastest stuff to understand. So, but let's do the second example. So for this example, I start with my 2 brackets again, and I know x is going to be in the first bracket, and I have to ask myself the question, what 2 numbers, when I multiply them, will give me -6, but when I add them, they give me plus, in this case, there's a 1 there, +1. So I'm going to start off again and write these. So I'm going to write 1 and 6 and 2 and 3 on the side. But because this is a -6, I have to either multiply -1 with +6 or +1 with -6. And the same here. It will either be a -2 times a +3 or a +2 times a -3. Because if I multiply all of these, all of the answers would be -6. But now I have to get to +1. So I just asked myself, what is -1 plus 6? Well, that's going to be 5. So that won't work. Top part won't work there. If I had 1 minus 6, that would actually give me -5. So that won't work either. So in this case, I have -2 plus 3. Let's just write that out. -2 plus 3 would be, ding, 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 we have a winner. So I know this pair will work. So I can just write -2 and +3. There's lots of tricks to do this easier, and if you go online, you can see some other videos, but this I found to be the easiest for my students to understand. Again, there are different ways. There's little grids you can draw and things, but this seems for me to be very, very simple. But let's do 2 more examples quickly. You can pause the video and see if you can kind of figure them out on your own. But let's just write one down. Let's do x squared minus 9. Well, let's just do the 1. Let's just do the 1 because then I have lots of space here on the side to write. So x squared minus 9x plus 20. And I know I'm going to be able to factorize this into 2 brackets. X is in the front. And now the riddle is what times what will give me plus 20? But if I add or subtract them, they'll give me -9. So first I have to write out all the numbers here that will actually be able to give me 20. When you do this a lot of times, then you'll kind of not have to write down everything on the side anymore. You'll just realize, oh, I know which 2 numbers it is. But let's just start from the start. So let's say 1 times 20, that will give me 20. If I have 2 and 10, that will work. 3 won't go, 4 will work. 4 times 5, and then, yeah, 5 times 4, there's nothing else. So those are the 3 kind of possibilities that I have, that I can think about now. Hopefully there aren't any of those. Anyway, but I have to get to plus 20, so they all have to be either plus or negative. Again, you don't have to write this out, but this is kind of my method. It works for me. And now I can just see I have to get to -9. Now I know with a 1 and a 20 I won't be able to get to 9 because I'll either get to 19 or to 21. So I know this won't work. And with a 2 and a 10, I can either have like 10 to get to 12 or to 8 or something, but that won't work. But I know 4 and 5, that looks like it can get me to 9. And because I have to get to -9, I know -4 minus -5 would be -9. So that's -4, -5. So you see that was, obviously you didn't have to go through all that stuff we did in the first one, because you'll see, oh, okay, later it'll become really easy. So in the next one, we'll quickly, let's do another one. We'll see if I'm telling the truth, whether you're getting this faster or not. Let's do x squared minus 2x minus big number 80. Ooh, big number. So again, we can factorize this. Not all of them would be able to factorize, but obviously this is the beginning video of the series or the beginning of trinomials. So we're kind of doing ones that are solvable. So I can do the x there. And now I'm going to ask myself 1 and 80 but I know 1 and 80 won't work, right? Because there's no combination of 1 and 80 that'll give me to -2. So I know from the start that won't work. I can do 2 and 40, but I also have an idea that won't work because I can either get to 38 or to 42 with those two numbers. I won't get to 2. Let's do 4 and 20. 20. That should work. No, it would, well, 4 times 20 would give me 80, but that won't get me close to 2 because 4 and 20, either I multiply, or I add them and I get 24, or I subtract them and I get 16, but there's no option for me to get to 2. Let's try 8 and 10. Now this looks very promising because I know 8 and 10, if I found the difference between those two, it would be 2. So this is a negative number I need. So it's either going to be -8 times +10, or it's going to be +8 times -10. And now I just have to figure out which of these combinations would give me a -2 number. So obviously if the bigger number is negative and the smaller one is positive, because if I multiply these two, I'm going to get 8x. And if I multiply those two, I'm going to get -10x. And if I take that from each other, I'm going to get -2x, which is that. And obviously multiplying a positive times a negative would give me a negative, and 8 times 10 would give me 80. Okay, I think that's enough for this video, but if you need some more tips or tricks on these, please write in the comments and say you need to do some more examples. But I think this is a very straightforward method.